Okay, so here we are. I wanted to spend a bit more time on this video than what I usually do with my videos, where I record them in a day, get them edited in a day, and get them uploaded in a day. Instead, I actually have a script for this video. I'm gonna try and read it as if I don't have reading ability of a 4-year-old. So, basically, my review of Resident Evil Village is split into 4 parts. We have the story, the gameplay, my favourite parts, and my least favourite parts. So, let's begin with the story.
You've ruined everything!
So the story continues 3 years after the events of Resident Evil 7. We find Mia and Ethan living a quiet life somewhere in Eastern Europe, until Chris decides Mia is in the way of completing the Redfield lineage, and so bodies Mia and steals their baby. So the base of this game is relatively simplistic at first. You find your kid and get the hell out. But as the game progresses, things get slightly more, for lack of a better word, batshit insane. Turns out the main protagonist for the game, the hot witch doctor Mother Miranda...
Enough.
Hey, she is hot! I called it! Has turned Rose, your daughter, into hard candy and split her between her 4 children. And now you gotta put Rose back together like a Lego minifigure and get the hell out. But then things get more nuts when it's revealed that Mother Miranda was in fact Mia, and she was the one that Chris murked back at the beginning of the game, making our boy Chris the good guy once again, absolving him of any wrongdoing. Now, I felt Chris's reasoning for not telling Ethan any of his plan was kind of odd, as I believe Ethan would have gotten involved one way or another. And Chris's plan to move the Winters family to Mother Miranda's home turf was a questionable move at best. So in essence, the main basis for the plot is built on character decisions, but in my personal opinion, don't necessarily make much sense. The strangest part is that it's almost like the game knows this, when one of Chris's team actually calls him out for not telling Ethan, potentially avoiding all of this and Ethan's death. We're coming to that. Now, the story for Resident Evil Village is filled with many twists and turns, but probably the best plot twist the game offers is that Ethan is in fact a molded, and has actually been dead this entire time, becoming a molded after Jack Baker murdered him in Resident Evil 7. I really enjoyed this twist. It's one of those twists where the signs were pretty much there all along if you knew where to look and what to question. From Ethan being able to reattach limbs with some painkiller juice, Lady Dimitrescu saying Ethan's blood is going stale, to the blackened flesh on Ethan's hand when Lady Dimitrescu slices it off. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I did not see this twist coming, as I saw Ethan surviving almost everything the games threw at him and simply put it down to either plot armor or just classic video game logic. But it actually had a reason, and upon second playthrough of both Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8, every "you are dead" screen is no longer just a fact that the game beat you, but now almost an eerie, constant reminder that the guy you're playing as is already dead, and has been for quite some time. It's a small thing that I feel adds a layer of creep to both games that I can appreciate. In conclusion, the story for Resident Evil Village is excellent. However, some questionable character motives stop it from being damn near perfect for me, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it and was completely immersed in the story Capcom set out to tell, and I cannot wait for Resident Evil 9 when it probably releases in 4 to 5 years.
Last time, you freak, I swear to God!
Can't have a good story without good gameplay. So, as expected, Resident Evil Village runs along a similar vein to Resident Evil 7, however, with some key differences. One I noticed being more of an emphasis on the action sequences rather than just pure survival horror. Where Resident Evil 7 put the player in an almost permanent state of fear, the scares could sometimes run the risk of feeling cheap or not earned. I feel Village does a good job at avoiding this, rather allowing you to enjoy the action set pieces the game has. However, when the horror aspects of Village come out, they come out in full swing and the scares feel truly earned. More on that later. Now, one thing I did not necessarily enjoy was the puzzles, or lack thereof. Allow me to explain. Now, I wasn't expecting to solve the Da Vinci Code for every door I needed to unlock, but I was definitely expecting more. But the majority of the puzzles aren't necessarily puzzles, but more fetching an item, inspecting that item, finding the part, open the door, repeat. This kind of grew to be quite tedious, especially when it came to levels like Heisenberg's factory, which I believe suffered from this problem the most, and I kind of just wanted that part to be over and done with. Now, in terms of boss fights have always been quite important to Resident Evil, and boss fights are more or less classic Resident Evil, or rather just classic FPS in general. Just shoot at it until it dies, really, there's not much else to it. However, with Resident Evil as a series, there has always been quite a heavy emphasis on inventory management. Previous games have proven that if you don't come correct, you could be in serious trouble, and may actually have to backtrack quite far to fix that mistake, meaning you have to load a completely different save, go over it again, make sure you're well equipped. And this game carries that tradition on, in my opinion. Admittingly, I actually made this mistake with a Mother Miranda boss fight. I went in with not enough firepower, 0 healing items, and got slaughtered around 4 times before I got incredibly lucky. The only exception to this boss fight rule being the Heisenberg boss fight, which felt more like Titanfall than Resident Evil, and I had an absolute blast with that one. Exploration is a pretty big part of Resident Evil Village. Now, call me a casual, but I really enjoy the linear path as long as the story holds me. I'm happy to be on rails enjoying the ride. However, with Village, I found myself actually wanting to break off a linear path, to explore these incredibly detailed worlds to their fullest. By doing this, you can find hidden items and treasures, and also exploring the hidden lore of the game world. As I progressed, I found myself becoming more and more aware of what exactly goes down in the village, and even how the events of the village connect all the way back to the antagonists of the original games, the Umbrella Corp. I found myself genuinely invested in the story this lore told, and felt that it did a good job of enhancing the story Capcom was telling. In conclusion, the gameplay for Resident Evil Village is insanely detailed and incredibly well done, with satisfying combat coupled with interesting exploration. It remains one of its strongest points. However, the singular point that brings it down from perfect is the puzzle sections. They could have been improved upon, as they eventually become quite tedious and slightly repetitive. Now, I actually have 2 most favourite parts, so I'll tackle them in order, second and first most favourite bit. So, my second favourite part of Resident Evil Village was Castle Dimitrescu. Castle Dimitrescu is without a doubt the main attraction in Resident Evil Village's theme park of nightmares. Exploring the castle with Big Mama and her kids on my back was actually terrifying at points, with Lady Dimitrescu taking on the role of a Mr. X / Jack Baker boss, an unstoppable force that pursues you throughout certain sections of the castle, whilst other areas are actually reserved for her children to basically torment you. For me, the castle bears similarities to the Raccoon City Police Department from Resident Evil 2's remake, and probably the original as well, with narrow hallways and sometimes very limited space to move around and survive. I felt it did a fantastic job of mixing the gothic horror style of Resident Evil 4 with the more up-to-date horror aspects of Resident Evil 7. Initially, I did find it odd that you could go to Castle Dimitrescu so early in the game, and finish it so early too, as I still believe that killing off the villain that was arguably your poster gal for advertising the game in the first 2 hours was a very bold choice, which led me to think that Capcom didn't exactly know what they had in their hands with Lady Dimitrescu, and I was very worried about what comes after this. What else could top this? Had Capcom played their best hand too soon? Well, that brings me on to the breakout moment of the game, and that's Beneviento Dollhouse. After Castle Dimitrescu, the Duke tells you the location of the other lords and the other parts of your daughter. Your first stop is a nice estate next to a waterfall called Beneviento Dollhouse. Now, at first glance, it would appear Capcom is leaning into the classic horror trope of creepy possessed dolls being scary. That's when you start hallucinating about your dead wife, her beckoning you to follow her to the house. You walk in and see a rather cozy estate with little to no standout or alarming features. It's actually perfectly normal. Then you head to an elevator that takes you to the lower levels of the house, where things slowly degrade. You have all your items removed. No medkits, no weapons, no choice. And what comes next, I know I'm probably going to catch fire for this comparison, but what comes next is straight out of PT. It's truly spectacular, and in many ways doesn't even feel part of the same game I'd already been playing for around 3 hours at this point. Here's the thing, I'm all about horror games that give you choice, whether it's to sneak past enemies, go full on Doomslayer on enemies, or simply give me a chance at defending myself. I prefer having the illusion that I'm in a position of strength, which is one of the reasons why I can't play games like Outlast, where your only choice is to run and hide. However, in the dollhouse, being pursued by an unholy abomination with only one bed to hide under, you have no choice but to run, hide, and run some more. It takes away your choice, making you, as both the in-game character and as the player, incredibly vulnerable. It is a genuinely fantastic section that I really don't want to play again, and it allowed Capcom to flex some horror muscles they built up so well in Resident Evil 7.
Ow!
Now, on to my least favourite parts. This was tough to write, as I found myself not really hating or disliking a bunch of it, but there is one particular section that I do dislike more than I like. The part I disliked the most was Heisenberg's factory. The enemies you encounter aren't necessarily formidable, but more of a mild inconvenience, and they can be easily avoided with stuff like flashbangs and other heavy weaponry. As I actually type this review, I genuinely cannot think of any redeeming qualities for Heisenberg's factory, unless we count the boss fight, which actually makes this section of the review quite ironic. My most disliked part had my most favourite boss fight, whilst the part I liked the most had my least favourite boss fight. And that, of course, is the dollhouse. The dollhouse actually has the honour of being my most/least favourite part. Whilst everything about the dollhouse literally chilled me to the bone, the boss fight is incredibly weak, with Ethan having to find and stab a not so very well hidden doll. I was able to locate the doll without a problem on my first try, and was genuinely confused as to why nothing was happening as I was searching. I believed after a certain period of time the other dolls tried to kill you, but I never took long enough, and I doubt many other people did either. So in conclusion, out of all the boss fights, this one is unfortunately the weakest. So in conclusion, Resident Evil Village builds upon an insanely strong foundation that was given to it when Resident Evil 7 released, and I genuinely cannot wait to see where they go with Resident Evil 9. It looks as though they're teasing Rosemary Winters will be the protagonist of the next game, which might actually lean into more supernatural abilities instead of traditional pistol, SMG, shotgun weaponry. We might actually be the bioweapon in the game, which I'm very much looking forward to seeing how they experiment with that and what becomes of it. But for now, Resident Evil Village is a worthy addition to the Resident Evil franchise, and I'm going to go play it again. I'm going to go play Mercenaries now, as I haven't actually done that yet, so I've still got something to look forward to. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. It is a little bit different than ones I usually do. I'm actually surprised this has only taken me 21 minutes to record. I'm probably going to end up only chopping it down to about 15. But yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like and a comment. Also subscribe, that's also a thing you can do. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you all very much for watching, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye now.